Most people believe their financial problems come from the big decisions, the obvious ones. The car they financed, the apartment they chose, the major purchases they can point to and justify. But what if the real damage isn't coming from those visible expenses? What if the true threat to your financial future is something far less obvious, something quieter, more consistent, and far more destructive over time? Because the reality is, most people don't lose wealth in large, dramatic moments. They lose it slowly through patterns of spending that feel normal, justified, and completely harmless in isolation. The danger of these spending patterns is not their size, it's their frequency and persistence. A large purchase forces you to think. It demands attention. But small, repeated expenses slip under the radar. They don't trigger concern. They don't feel significant enough to question. And because of that, they continue unchecked. Day after day, week after week, they quietly redirect money away from building assets and toward maintaining habits. Over time, that redirection compounds, creating a gap between where you are and where you could have been. One of the most overlooked wealth killers is convenience spending. The premium you pay to save time, reduce effort, or avoid discomfort. Food delivery instead of cooking. Subscription services instead of ownership. Quick solutions instead of efficient ones. None of these decisions feel unreasonable on their own. In fact, they often feel justified. You're busy, you're tired, you're optimizing your time. But convenience comes with a cost, and that cost is often hidden within the frequency of the behavior. What feels like a small trade-off in the moment becomes a consistent drain over time. Another silent factor is subscription creep. These are the recurring charges that accumulate gradually, often without conscious awareness. Streaming platforms, software tools, memberships, premium features, each one seems minor, but together they create a fixed expense structure that grows quietly. The problem isn't just the money being spent. It's the fact that these expenses become normalized. They transition from optional to automatic, from conscious choices to default behavior. And once something becomes a default, it rarely gets questioned. There's also the issue of emotional spending, which operates beneath the surface of logic. This isn't reckless spending, it's responsive spending. Buying to relieve stress, reward effort, or shift your mood. It feels controlled, even deserved. But over time, it creates a pattern where spending becomes tied to emotional states. And because emotions fluctuate constantly, so does the spending. This introduces inconsistency into your financial behavior, making it difficult to maintain a stable, long-term system. Another major wealth killer is what can be described as invisible upgrades. These are small increases in spending that occur as your income grows, but don't feel like significant changes. Slightly better products, slightly more expensive options, slightly higher standards across multiple areas of life. Individually, these upgrades seem insignificant, but collectively, they reshape your entire cost structure. They raise your baseline without triggering awareness. And once your baseline increases, it becomes your new normal. What makes these invisible upgrades particularly dangerous is that they don't feel like lifestyle inflation. They feel like improvement, like progress, like you're simply making better choices. And in some cases, you are. But without intentional limits, these improvements accumulate in a way that absorbs the financial gains you've worked to achieve. Instead of creating a gap between income and expenses, they close it. Then there's the concept of spending drift. This happens when your financial behavior slowly moves away from your original intentions. You start with a plan, save, invest, be disciplined, but over time, small deviations begin to appear. A little more spending here, a skipped investment there. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. But over months and years, those small deviations compound. And eventually, you find yourself operating in a way that no longer aligns with your goals. Spending drift is difficult to detect because it doesn't feel like a change. It feels like a series of reasonable decisions, each one justified, each one isolated. But together, they create a new pattern. And patterns, once established, are difficult to break. Not because they're impossible to change, but because they no longer feel like choices. They feel like habits. Another silent wealth killer is the absence of friction in spending. Modern financial systems are designed to make spending as easy as possible. One-click purchases, auto-renewals, stored payment methods, seamless transactions that remove the need to think. While this convenience is efficient, it also reduces awareness. You don't feel the transaction. You don't experience the exchange. And when spending becomes frictionless, it becomes easier to repeat without consideration. Contrast that with investing, which often requires intention, effort, and delay. You have to choose to do it. You have to wait for results. There is friction involved. And because of that, spending becomes the default behavior, while investing becomes optional. Over time, this imbalance shapes your financial outcomes in a significant way. There is also the issue of misaligned rewards. Many people reward themselves with spending. They work hard, achieve something, or simply get through a difficult period, and the response is to spend money. Again, this feels justified, but it reinforces a pattern where progress leads to consumption, not accumulation. And if every win results in spending, the long-term impact is a cycle where financial progress is constantly offset by financial release. Another overlooked factor is the failure to track small expenses. Not in an obsessive way, but in an awareness-based way. When you don't periodically review where your money is going, you lose visibility. And without visibility, patterns remain hidden. You can't adjust what you don't see. And if small expenses are quietly increasing, they will continue to do so until they become large enough to notice, at which point the damage has already been done. The core issue across all of these wealth killers is not the spending itself. It's the lack of intentionality. Money is being directed without a clear system, without defined priorities, and without consistent review. And when money is unmanaged, it doesn't disappear randomly. It flows toward what is easiest, most immediate, and most emotionally satisfying, rarely toward what is most beneficial long-term. The solution is not extreme restriction. It's strategic awareness. It's building a system where spending decisions are aligned with long-term goals, where convenience is used intentionally, not habitually, where subscriptions are reviewed, not ignored, where emotional spending is recognized, not disguised, and where small expenses are understood for what they are, not insignificant but cumulative. One of the most effective ways to counter these silent wealth killers is to introduce friction back into spending. Not to make life difficult, but to make decisions more visible. Turning off auto-renewals. Removing saved payment methods. Creating small pauses between impulse and action. These simple adjustments force awareness, and awareness leads to better decisions. At the same time, you reduce friction in investing. Automate contributions. Set up systems that operate without constant input. Make investing the default, not the exception. This shifts the balance. Instead of money flowing easily toward spending, it flows consistently toward growth. Over time, these adjustments create a new pattern. Spending becomes intentional. Investing becomes automatic. And the small leaks that once existed begin to close. Not through drastic changes, but through consistent alignment. Because the truth is, wealth is not just built by what you earn. It's built by what you keep. And what you keep is determined by the decisions you make every single day, especially the ones that feel too small to matter. If you take anything from this, let it be this. The biggest threats to your financial future are often the ones you don't notice. But once you see them, you can change them. If this opened your eyes, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Smart Money Compounds. Because here, we don't just focus on making money, we focus on protecting it, growing it, and keeping it working for you.